coming. I'm Ruth Lockhart, Executive Director of Mabel Wadsworth Women's Health Center in Bangor, and I'm the chair of the Maine Choice Coalition. The Coalition for Maine Women and the Maine Choice Coalition consist of a range of organizations committed to women's economic security, civil rights, and freedom from violence. These organizations have been working together for more than 20 years and reached thousands of women in this state. We have the common goal of improving the economic, social, and political status of Maine women. Today we are gathering once again, to remind our lawmakers that 678,000 women and girls make up more than half the population of Maine, and our perspectives and priorities must be taken into account as policy is made. For Maine to thrive, women and their families must thrive. As the new year begins, and the new legislative session also begins, Maine lags far behind our New England neighbors in recovering from the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has documented that Maine has only recovered 56% of the jobs lost in the recession, placing us at 46th among the 50 states. The nation as a whole has regained 123% of the jobs lost, and New England has regained 132% of the jobs lost. We don't really need statistics to tell us that Maine's economy is weak. We all have friends, family, and neighbors who are looking for work, recent college graduates asking themselves if they can stay in Maine, older workers laid off after decades of service to their employer, capable and responsible people who can't get the hours they need or whose jobs just don't pay any benefits. Clearly, we must improve Maine's economy and create good jobs that support Maine workers and their families. Building a strong economy is a deliberate act that requires a set of choices that ensure that Mainers can meet their most basic needs, create access to the full range of health care services for all, invest in a strong educational foundation for children and in giving adults the tools they need to support themselves, and bring our workplace policies into the 21st century. In 2015, our coalition has identified as priorities 3 initiatives that strengthen the ability of Maine people, particularly women, to succeed. Our 4th priority bill is a matter of simple human decency. As always, we will oppose short-sighted tax and spending decisions, efforts that demonize people who need our help, and proposals that would undermine our existing rights. The first step toward economic security is the ability to decide whether and when to have children. Here to speak about access to contraception and other health care is Helen Regan, a member of Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights.
Thank you, Ruth. And good morning. I'm very pleased to be here speaking on behalf of Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights. And I want to begin my remarks by posing a rhetorical question. What do you think would be the top 3 or 4 items that should be on a list of infrastructure improvements that would benefit women in Maine? You might list access to high-speed internet. You might list access to low-interest educational loans. You might even list access to child care. But most people wouldn't necessarily list access to family planning, and that is a mistake. For women to be able to choose when to have children, to space their pregnancies, is essential to be able to plan their careers and complete their education. So Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights is a strong supporter of a bill that will be considered by the legislature this session to increase access to family planning services and other reproductive and health issues. The bill will increase access to family planning services for women who will not have them unless they become pregnant and go on Maine care. That, of course, will cost the state additional money. It's in everyone's interest for the women to be able to space their pregnancy. Family planning is good for women, good for healthy families, good for Maine's economy, and we have every
Thank you, Helen. The next critical step in building a strong economy is investing in the healthy development of children. Claire Berkowitz, Executive Director of the Maine Children's Alliance, will speak on the choices lawmakers can make this year to ensure that our next generation is well prepared to succeed.
Good morning. I'm Claire Berkowitz, Executive Director of the Maine Children's Alliance. Child development experts have demonstrated that the most critical development of a child's brain happens within the first 5 years of life. Our state's Head Start, home visiting, and high-quality child care programs provide meaningful, enriched care and resources to Maine's most vulnerable children and families, ensuring that those first years of our children's lives involve as much physical, emotional, and cognitive well-being as possible. But we also know that our support of strong early childhood programming will not only bolster our state's economic recovery, but provide economic security for future generations as well. Children who receive high-quality early education and care are more prepared for gainful employment. Studies show that investments in quality early childhood programming reduce future state costs in health interventions, special education, and public assistance, as well as reducing crime and preparing kids to become productive members of the community. The future health of Maine's economy depends on raising a generation of skilled and able workers, an initiative which at its most effective starts at birth. However, there are even more immediate economic benefits to investing in early childhood education and care. Nationally, 1.2 million mothers of very young children work in low-wage jobs, paying $10 an hour or less, and nearly half of them are raising their children alone. In Maine last year, it cost the average single mother up to 41% of her income to place an infant in center-based care. Parents who are able to take advantage of high-quality care for their children with fewer days of work can be more productive employees and business owners. Inadequate or inaccessible child care means that parents cannot obtain or maintain gainful employment, leaving them vulnerable to falling into poverty. Despite the research on its benefit to families and communities, the early childhood programming that will support Maine's children continues to go underfunded. We are calling on our elected leaders to make early childhood programming a priority this session. The future of our state depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire. As we know, Maine has a troubling rate of domestic violence and sexual assault. We are supporting common sense legislation to ensure that victims do not suffer job loss in addition to physical and sexual health. Here to speak on that bill is Julia Colpitts, Executive Director of the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Ruth. And as we can hear, the legislature is already well at work in this process. The Women's Coalition and the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence have worked collaboratively for years in an effective partnership in keeping the economic and social safety net in place for all victims, providing safety for women and children in Maine. Economic reality, having no money, no place to live, keeps many victims of violence from being able to leave their abusive circumstances and all too often forces them to return. Having a job is the first step toward independence and safety, and a victim's employment is vital to building economic security for that family, for them and their children. The legislature clearly intended to help victims of violence while they work their way through domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking crises. In 1999, the legislature passed a law requiring employers to provide reasonable and necessary leave for victims to go to court, get medical assistance, or do what they needed to do to keep themselves safe and keep their job. However, the legislature did not put any teeth in that particular statute. The only penalty to employers is a $250 fine. that can be assessed only by the Department of Labor. Now, most employers are good citizens and smart employers. They follow the reasonable leave options for victims. However, we are seeing more and more cases of circumstances in which a victim has had their employment terminated or been retaliated against for exercising their leave. We want clear consequences for the few employers who illegally retaliate or terminate victims from employment when they take their leave. We want to deter that behavior, and we want to compensate victims for their loss. An act to protect the existing right of a victim of sexual assault, domestic violence, to take necessary leave from employment, sponsored by Representative Daughtry of Brunswick, would imply and allow employees a private right of action. In simple language, that means it gives them the right that most of us have in most circumstances to sue when an employer has acted illegally. This would encourage employers to provide that necessary leave and act as a deterrent. And in addition, it would allow victims to take that leave without being afraid of retaliation. Victims who want to work to create new and sustainable lives, they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to be dependent on social welfare resources. And this legislation would allow them to be successful on that employment path towards safety and security by retaining the right to work through the crisis of violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. The fourth bill we are supporting is one of simple human decency. You would not think we need a law to say that pregnant and laboring prisoners should not be shackled. Here to tell us more about this issue is Amarasingham of ACLU Maine.
Good morning. My name is Amarasingham, and I'm the Public Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maine. Today, the Coalition for Maine Women and the Maine Choice Coalition are proud to announce our support for an act to prevent the shackling of pregnant women, sponsored by Senator Ann Haskell of Portland. This legislation will protect women and their pregnancies by banning the use of restraints on a prisoner or detainee known to be pregnant during labor, transport to a medical facility, delivery, and postpartum recovery, except in extraordinary circumstances. The treatment of pregnant prisoners is an issue that must be addressed now. Across the nation, women are the fastest growing population of incarcerated Americans. Here in Maine, the number of women in our prisons has increased sixfold since 2002, the vast majority sentenced for low-level, non-violent offenses. Contact with the criminal justice system is devastating for a woman and her family. The majority of women in prison have a history of trauma and abuse, and once in prison, women are often the victims of sexual assault perpetrated by prison staff. These factors mean incarcerated women face a complicated set of challenges to rehabilitation and re-entry into society. Pregnant and parenting women suffer acute harms at the hands of the criminal justice system. A 2010 report by the National Women's Law Center gave Maine a failing grade when it comes to conditions of confinement for pregnant women and parenting women here in Maine, based on poor prenatal care, the unavailability of family-based treatment as an alternative to incarceration, and our lack of a shackling policy. Maine currently has no law regulating the shackling of pregnant women, making us an outlier among New England states. This bill will end a cruel and unusual practice that demonstrates a deliberate indifference to the medical needs of women and their pregnancies. Maine needs this law to protect the health of a pregnant woman and her fetus. Shackling a pregnant woman increases her chance of accidentally tripping and falling and harming her pregnancy, and can get in the way of necessary medical care during labor and postpartum recovery. Following birth, it is critical for a woman to remain unshackled to prevent postpartum hemorrhage. Freedom from restraints also fosters postpartum bonding. Restraining a woman after she gives birth restricts postpartum bonding between a mother and her newborn, which is essential to the healthy development of the child. 25 states have outlawed the shackling of pregnant prisoners. In those states, there have been no documented instances of a woman in labor or during delivery escaping or causing harm to themselves, security guards, or medical staff. Policies against the shackling of pregnant women have widespread support, both locally and from national correctional, medical, and human rights bodies. This includes the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the U.S. Marshals Service, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the American Correctional Association, the American College of Nurses, Midwives, the American Congress of Obstetricians and the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Medical Association, the American Public Health Association, the Association of Women's Health, Obstetric and Neonatal Nurses, and the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. It is time for Maine to catch up.
Thank you, Omi. These are but a few of the thousands of decisions our elected leaders will make over the next 6 months. Decisions that cumulatively will shape both our daily lives and the very character of our beloved state. Each is an opportunity to make a choice. Will Maine be a place where everyone has the chance to succeed? Will we take the steps to ensure a healthy and educated populace that is well prepared for the future? Will we take a long-term view in tax and spending decisions, investing in the future, and expecting every person and business to pay their fair share? Will we welcome new Americans, stemming Maine's population decline and learning from people with different experiences? Will we look to the future, not the past? Will we recognize that women are vital to our society and economy, and that when women thrive, Maine thrives? Resoundingly, we all say yes. And for that reason, we will oppose wrong-headed bills that take us backwards. As we have for decades, we will oppose any effort to undermine a woman's autonomy over her own reproduction. Once again this year, we will oppose any attempt to abridge our civil rights, including granting exemption from state laws based on religious objection. We look forward to working with our elected leaders to improve the lives of all Mainers, including the 51% of the population that is female. We love our state, and we want it to be a place where our children and grandchildren can succeed. Thank you very much.